What's the most illegal thing you've ever done and gotten away with? I believe I ran from the cops one night when I was living in Italy. I had my 2012 Mustang over there, and one night heading home from a scatter park about an hour away from my base and a few miles from the autostrada on some country roads, I rounded a curve and passed by a cop sitting on the inside of the corner. I was going a bit faster than the posted speed limit, and although the speed limits are kind of just suggestions, police over there seemed to jump at the chance to pull over someone in an obviously rare car. The second I saw the flicker of light in my mirror, I was gone. A Mustang over in Italy is significantly more rare than a Ferrari or Lamborghini, and since I was nowhere near where other Americans would have been with really no other reason to be in the town we were in, I gunned it to the autostrada and floored it home. I have no idea if the cop even pulled out or did anything, but I know I did. I hate to say it, but no one is going to write a good, honest story here. I've got some stories I'd love to share, because I think they're clever, but I won't risk actually writing them out. Actually, I'll follow that up with something I observed, but didn't do myself. I shared with my previous employer, one of the largest banks in the USA, information that they were essentially hiding $2 billion in losses. They investigated it until they realized I was right, pretended to give a shit for about a year, and then swept it back under the rug. I stole a bike in college. I know. I suck. I have regretted it every day since. I think about it a lot. I was broke and had no bike. I rode a lot. It was sitting there unlocked, and I just got on and rode away. I rode it for a few months and then it got stolen from me. I was relieved, and also saddened, but I felt like I deserved it. Now, once a year, I give a girl's bike and a boy's bike to the downtown rescue mission on Christmas gift day. I do it specifically because I hurt someone else, and since I can never repay that person, I can only offset the taking of happiness with giving someone joy. I will do it every year that I can afford it for the rest of my life. Doing about 140 miles per hour in a 55 mile per hour zone. It was 1 in the morning. I was young and stupid with a fast car. I had just gotten off the ramp onto the freeway when another car was zooming up behind me, just looking for an excuse to gun it. I took it. I was only at that speed for maybe 1 minute before coasting back to a normal speed. Just the speed alone was pretty terrifying. A few seconds later, I am treated to a blinding spotlight coming in from my driver's side window. I glance over and see police across the side of the car. Shit. I pull over. Cop comes up on my with gun drawn, yelling and screaming at me. He's asking if I've been drinking. What the hell have I been doing? What the hell I'm going to do if he impounds my car, arrests me, and fines me $1,000? I had no response. I basically sat there, dumbfounded, stammering out responses to his questions. After he ranted at me for a while, he went quiet. Then "You're killing me. Get out of here," and walked away. I don't drink, but I sure as hell went home and slammed a beer as I told my roommate. Okay. Ill talk. In 3rd grade, I cheated on my history exam. In 4th grade, I stole my Uncle Max's toupee and I glued it on my face when I was Moses in my Hebrew school play. In 5th grade, I knocked my sister Edie down the stairs and I blamed it on the dog. When my mom sent me to the summer camp for fat kids and then they served lunch, I got nuts and I pigged out and they kicked me out. But the worst thing I ever done, I mixed up all this fake puke at home and then I went to this movie theater. Hid the puke in my jacket. Climbed up to the balcony and then I made a noise like this. Hua 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 hua. And then I dumped it over the side. All over the people in the audience. And then, this was horrible. All the people started getting sick and throwing up all over each other. And I never felt so bad in my entire life. After my cousin had to go to the hospital for a 3rd time because her husband beat the shit out of her, I decided to do something about it. I climbed into their backyard and made some noise on the porch until he came out to investigate. I sucker punched him. It's the hardest I've ever hit anything. I felt bone and teeth crack under my hand. My plan was to beat him up a little and tell him to leave her alone. But I knocked him the FCK out. So I used some of their son's art supplies that was outside to write him a note that said, if you touch her again I will slit your F-king throat. Some people won't believe this, but it happened. I'm not the least bit remorseful about it, and if I to do it again I would do it without a moment's hesitation. A little late, but whatever. Still worth sharing. Last spring break I went to an Euro trip with my school. In Amsterdam we had a couple of hours for ourselves, so me and two friends decided that since we were already there we would get some weed and smoke it at the hotel that night. I bought 2 joints and a lighter that I stored in my carry-on backpack for later use. That night we got baked and had fun. But my stoned self was dumb enough to put the containers with some leftover weed and the lighter back into my backpack. Fast forward to a week later in a small airport in Kayseri, Turkey, and I opened my backpack to look for my boarding pass, and behold, I had completely forgotten that the weed and lighters were still in there. So basically somehow I managed to get through security in Brussels, Istanbul's, and Kayseri's airports with no repercussions. TL. Doctor, airport security in Belgium and Turkey sucks. When I was around 16 my friends and I broke into a house that was for sale. It was an amazing house and we kept coming there for nearly half a year. We put furniture in it, lots of alcohol and weed, and got drunk there almost every weekend. We also stayed there when we were skipping school. As time went on stuff started to disappear. As in the entire kitchen was just gone today. We found out the people selling it were in major debt and bailiffs took it. We destroyed that house. I'm talking real, quickly controlled, fires, puke everywhere and ruined walls. One day all our stuff was gone. The day after the locks were changed. It got sold for about 30% of the original selling price a little while after that. Best times of my life though. I bribed a Ukrainian customs inspector to let me bring some antiquities back home with me. Nothing too old or valuable, but still against Ukrainian law. Though back then, I think bribery was almost expected. Also hooked up with a guy and went back to his apartment. But he passed out before he could drive me back. Stupid to get in his car and not take my own. I know. I couldn't wake him up. But I had to leave town the next day. So I dressed him, carried him to his car, put him in the passenger seat and drove back to the bar where we met. Got my own car and drove the hell out of there. When I was 10 or 11, my neighbor's stepdad captured a cat in a cat trap and kept it behind his house for a few days with no food or water. One day, the cat trap was empty and my friend said his dad had taken the cat to a faraway place and let it go. Not sure what to think. I snuck back onto my friend's property when no one was home and found the trap. I broke the wooden trap mechanism into little pieces and threw the entire trap into the neighbor's yard. Years later, I asked my friend if he ever noticed the cat trap was missing and he immediately said yeah. And you were the one who broke it. I had 0 FCKs to give. I worked at a store in the mall that sold things like blacklights and just a bunch of shit you don't need. Over the course of a year that I worked there, I would steal shit from almost every order that came in. My room looked like a pothead's wet dream. Looking back, I could have gotten in a lot of trouble and I don't know what the FCK I was thinking. I had to have stolen a couple $1,000s or more of worthless shit. I guess it was my little way of getting back at the man. But in reality, I was just a thieving little shit. We also smoked pot in the bathroom in the back of the store and there was a sheriff's office right across the hall from us. If there is a God, he must love me. Because I can't believe I didn't get caught doing any of that shit. I'm a lucky sumbik. My brother and some friends of mine were screwing around once in our garage when I was probably in 9th grade. And we came across a large can of gunpowder, which my dad had for some reason. We decided to make a pipe bomb and blow it up on the gravel road in the cemetery next door. We were able to find a piece of PVC pipe which I believe was threaded on both ends. And we capped it. We didn't have a fuse. So we drilled a hole in this thing. Filled it with the gunpowder. And then used model glue to create a fuse of sorts. We lit that thing. And nothing happened for probably 5 minutes. We were maybe 60 or 70 feet away behind a tree. And we started arguing about whether we should go up and relight the model glue since we were sure it had gone out. It seemed like it only barely lit to begin with. Turns out, model glue burned slowly and without an extremely visible flame. We let reason prevail. And were wailing back towards my house arguing about what to do about this bomb thing lying in the middle of the road when it blew up. At this point, we had to have been 80 or 90 yards away. And when it blew, it was extremely loud. And we heard gravel rain down all over the tin roof of the apartment building across the street. Thinking back, that was probably, definitely, the dumbest and most illegal thing I've ever done. A friend or whatever. Well, his boss was a dick and one day when my friend's wife was visiting him at work, his boss asked her if she was so happy to cover for a lack of intelligence. My friend had apprenticed as a plumber for a while and so he knew a thing. So, he goes to work with a bag of various sizes nails. Went to the bathroom. Shoved a handful in each toilet. Where you couldn't see them if you were to take a shit. And waited for his co-workers to flush their poops. After 1 or 2 people came out saying everything was going crazy, his boss said, "Hey, Furfrindongle's friend. You used to be a plumber. Go take a look at the toilets." Fear backing up. Double quote. So, he goes in. Flushes the rest of the nails. Says you're not going to believe what happened. Told his boss the truth. Without saying it was him. And the repair bill was so high they closed the place down. Boss owned building. So, effing vindicating. For my friend. You know. I mean, I would imagine it was. Bought. Sold. Smoked weed. 160 on the freeway. 65 mph limit. On motorcycle. Pulled over on same motorcycle with expired tags. No proof of insurance and no license. B&E. Used to creep through backyards spying on random people, or not so random. Break into my HS to go swimming or rappelling. Appropriated about 5 scooters mopeds. Blew up a few mailboxes. Set a church parking lot on fire. Someone called a bomb threat at school one day. While I had a gallon of napalm in my locker. Sold answers to exams. Made about $250 on trig final. Bought liquor beer smokes underage. Jacked a few porno mags tapes. Yes. Tapes, for a convenience store. Almost arrested for kiddie porn. Almost got in a knife fight at a coffee shop. I should probably stop now. I brewed wine in my AP biology teacher's classroom without her knowledge. Senior year of high school. I was the TA for AP Bio. So I had lots of downtime in the lab. One day a few friends and I realized that all you needed to make alcohol was yeast, fruit, and time. So we did. I bought grapes and honey. And the teacher already had yeast. We found a recipe on how. Put everything in a giant jar. And told people that we were making jam. I made an apparatus to bubble out gas for fermentation and we stored it in her lab cabinets for a month. We had keys to everything and there were dozens of cabinets so we figured she wouldn't find it. Definitely could have gotten suspended, expelled, worse since we were minors making alcohol on school property. But whatever. Wine came out pretty good. A little stronger than the stuff that you get from a bottle. And slightly carbonated. 9/10 would do again. When I was a dumb young teenager I smoked pot on the play structure of a park in my neighborhood with a friend. I was baked. I looked over and saw a little kid looking at me funny and the mom coming up to see what I was doing. We had weed spread out and a pipe right there. I didn't know this girl well. She already gave me free weed and cigarettes and I didn't like her too much, so as the mom was about to confront us I just noped out of there so fast. I jumped off and looked at my friend, really just a girl I knew for a short period of time and met back up with but didn't like, but she offered free weed and said, "What the hell are you doing? There is a kid right there." I turned to the mom and said, "I am sorry you had to see this." And I walked away. It turns out the girl got bitched out, but I got away scot-free, but she got caught smoking pot in public again a little while later and got kicked out of her house and now living in a crack house. So that is bad. But I had to protect myself. I wasn't emotionally invested in her. I just took her shit and left. I guess a part of me feels a little bad, but not really. So this one time I was a local heb and I was super hungry because I had procrastinated buying groceries. Who f***ing does that? Anyways, there I am with a basket full of shit I don't need and stuff that isn't good for me because everything looks so damn good, and then I see it. A full case of donuts of every variety and size. So I slyly cruise up to the big glass doors and pick up one of those napkins they provide so that you don't get your dirty paws all over the pastries, and I pick up a chocolate donut and I slide it into the cheap paper bag and continue my quest for food. Halfway down the cereal aisle I break. I just f***ing lose it and I tear open the bag and inhale the chocolate covered donut. I could feel Satan smile with approval as I licked the chocolatey crumbs from my lips, but I couldn't help myself and the deed was already done, so I just crumpled the bag up and slid it in my pocket, all the while hoping that the loss prevention SEAL team would at least let me put my shirt over my head after they tackled and tasered me. This entire thread with all its mildness has made me feel more badass than I have ever felt. Ever. Or I'm just a hooligan by nature. Edit. I may or may not have pirate stuff. But I also brew apple beer. Sometimes it kinda goes off. In which case I may freeze the concoction and scoop out the frozen stuff, and then I may do it again. Because if all else fails, you allegedly commit a felony. Right? When I was 16, I was driving down one of the more Mario Kart-like roads that are in my area at night whilst arguing with my ex. I was doing about 70 in a 30 because I was mad. And as I came around a bend, another car passed me. That car turned out to be a cop. And as it went around the bend, it lit up and sirens started blaring. As an irrational teen who was already angry, I made the decision to run from the cops. I took the next right turn into a neighborhood and, by some grace, there was an open garage. I pulled in hella fast and turned my car off. Not a moment later I saw the cop car racing down the street I was on, trying to catch me. After the cop had passed, my ex said, "I'm never driving with you again." TLDR. Ran from the cops and successfully got away. Me and my friend were climbing buildings at like 2 AM and we got on top of our old middle school, and as we were leaving, right when we pulled out of the driveway, a cop drove past us. He turned around and followed us, and right as I was about to pull into my friend's driveway, he turned on his lights and pulled us over. Then 2 more cop cars came, which then made 5 cops there, 2 in 2 of the cars. He made me get out, I was driving, and asked what we were doing back there. I then remembered that I had my frisbee in my car, so I told him we were just playing frisbee on the field. He then went over to my friend and asked him what we were doing, and he told him that we got lost and we were looking for directions to get back home. So he now started getting suspicious. He asked me if we were drinking or smoking, and I said no. So he made my friend get out of the car and he asked me if they could search my car. I didn't have anything in there and I didn't want to cause any more trouble, so I just let him. They found fireworks that I forgot I had, but he let us off with a warning for that. Where we live, just having fireworks on you is about a $200 fine. They talked to us and said my story was a lot more convincing than my friend's, so they told him not to lie to them and they let us go. So we got away with climbing schools, which is jail time if you're caught. Fireworks. And lying to a cops. Throwaway account. I was a sexually frustrated teen, I would say. I reached a point early on that exercise and keeping my mind busy was not enough. Beginning in high school, during busy hallway passes or crowds, I began to grab student girls' asses. I'd go for my hand to fall within the ass crack or possible underneath between the legs. I'd practice first by simply becoming fully aware of my movements, mannerisms and facial expressions. I really took on this mindset of seeking and looking forward to committing these crimes. I practiced making sure to make my movement quick and unrecognized by possible witnesses. At the time it was euphoric. I had no remorse. It was my dark secret that you wouldn't know of if you saw me. I was an average student. Talkative and all around good guy. This went on for a couple years. I even did this a few times in another country on vacation. My turning point was a mental break I had during a massive battle with depression before reaching 20. I just broke. I had to face many other demons I had and I saw the evil and wrong I had done. Sometimes I thought that I wasn't the bad guy since possibly everyone has some thought similar at one point or other in their life. Was I that different because I acted on it? I fired a cook in the middle of some psychotic rage he was having. Couple hours later, he came in the back door of the kitchen and beat me like a drum. Broken nose, split lip and eyebrows, 2 broken ribs. I couldn't kill him. So I paid a few guys $100 to take care of stuff. He got the crap beat out of him 3 times that summer. And then he moved away. Months later, he returned. I found out where he was working and drove there one Sunday. The Lincoln Town car he cherished was next to the front door of the restaurant. I bought a Sunday paper and got in his car. Always lock the car door, kids. I stuffed the paper under the dash and seats, rolled the windows halfway down, and set fire to the paper. Then I went to the back of the parking lot. It took 20 minutes for anyone to notice the car was burning. By then it was too late to do anything. The arsehole came out, stood gaping at his Lincoln bonfire, and I slowly drove past in my car. I didn't even have to say anything. Just returned his stare. No cops ever spoke to me. I'm Samir and Mike, names changed to protect my friends. Once inserted code into banking software while I was working for a company switching banks over for the new millennium, and funneled millions of dollars out of their accounts into my own. And almost got caught when I left a letter of confession under my boss' door. Until a disgruntled employee burned the place down before my boss could read my confession. I've never loved the construction life so much. Late one night a few summers ago, some friends and I decided to drive to the top of a mountain by my house. Not our first time. But this time there were more of us. There was more alcohol and some other drugs. There was also a locked gate at the bottom that someone knew the code to. Apparently we were being quite obnoxious because a helicopter came and dropped its light on us. So we raced to the bottom where a bunch of cop cars were waiting. Buddy and I were put in the back of separate cop cars while everyone else was sat on a curb and questioned. Took what seemed like forever. Probably less than an hour. They let us go for some reason. Got into a drunken tiff at a friend's house when I was 19 and logically downed a couple more shots before walked around the block. I almost made it back but fell in the neighbor's yard and everything got all spinny. I saw blue and red lights flashing in my peripheral vision and just about accepted that I was starting a criminal record that evening. The officer that got out of the car was a close friend of my grandma's and instantly recognized me. He asked what I was doing and whatever I told him was probably amazingly smooth. After he made sure I safely got back in the house, I apologized to my pals. Didn't even tell my grandma. What a nice guy. I got a speeding ticket and a ticket for littering all in one probably 10 years ago. The ticket was around $300 or so and I just never paid for it. Usually when you don't pay your fine it will be sent to a collection agency and you won't be able to renew your license until you've paid for all parking or traffic related fines. I never received any notice. No collection calls. Was able to renew my license multiple times. It just got lost in the system. Which apparently hardly ever happens. I got really lucky with that one. When I was a kid I would always go to second-hand stores with my mum and there would always be clear bags of miscellaneous toys for sale. My mum usually let me have one bag since they were so cheap, but sometimes other bags had stuff I wanted. I would tear small holes in the bags, didn't know how to untie knots, and would inconspicuously maneuver the toys I wanted from the bags into the one bag I was actually going to get. Made me feel like such a rebel back then. Now I get antsy when I have to jaywalk. I'm not very good at this. I once transported a garbage bag full of vacuum-sealed high-grade marijuana from one town to another. I've sold and smoked weed regularly for years. But if I had gotten busted then, it would have been a completely different story. Not too sure on the laws here, but I would have probably gotten charged with possession with intent to distribute. And probably a separate charge for transporting such a large quantity. It must have been around 20 pounds. I was flying from the UK to Italy for an interview and I went to hand my passport to the lady at the check-in desk, the only time in years I haven't checked in online. Because I would have had to use my then current employer's printer, and a bag of MDMA fell out from between two of the pages. My heart has never thumped so hard in my life. I had to use my passport as ID for a night out a few weeks before and I thought I'd dropped the bag in the club. Luckily it fell out in my hand, so I shoved my hands back into my bag and pulled the bag out, then flushed it. Carrying Class A drugs is pretty illegal. But imagine if I had printed off my boarding pass and walked through security with it. Don't do drugs, kids. Senior in college. Implementing a new website for a non-profit organization that serves as a community for at-risk kids. As part of the registration process, kids needed parental permission to join. Until this point they just brought home forms and brought them back signed. Then the identifying data would be transferred into a database by hand. Well, they wanted this whole process online. And since the entire data mapping was completely different, and we didn't have much time to work with, I ended up writing a script that took some CSV files of the database and just filled out the form to get the data into the new database. Part of the form is an electronic signature. And electronic signatures, according to the state law, is only defined by uniquely identifiable data. So what I actually did was write a script that forged the signatures of thousands of people.